But the big news today is huge. And here it is, the criminal trial of defendant Donald Trump. Continuing today, you are looking at new images, and I'll explain exactly what it is. You may recall that first court hearing set a lot of rules down. Now you are looking at this first one since then, since Trump was arraigned, which was a precedent-busting moment for America. If you can recall, it was actually just 7 weeks ago. At that hearing, prosecutors went on offense over Trump's threats. That was a big part of what we reported. Judge warning him about his own conduct and scheduled another hearing, which brings us to what you see here today. Now, this is the footage we have. We will show you what we have. We don't have a million shots, but I can show you, isolated on the left, defendant Donald Trump sitting right there. This was a hearing on evidence and rules for a protective order. Trump had to legally appear in this hearing, which is another step towards his criminal trial. I can also report for you that according to his lawyers, he didn't want to do this, didn't want to be there. He was forced legally in the spot you see seated there because his lawyers argued that he should be able to skip some of the hearings. The judge disagreed, ordering his participation today. And so there were a few photographers able to capture just these images from inside. As we've told you, New York doesn't allow video. Otherwise, we'd have interesting video of the whole thing, but we'll tell you what happened. Trump was in that live video feed. The prosecutors want this protective order to stop Trump from disclosing any secret evidence that's internal to the court process. Now, Trump's there. He's next to one attorney. You can see on the feed the flags behind him. This is important, and I'm leaving this image up because, well, not only is it newsworthy, not only did the defendant not want you to see it, but it is another chapter in this first ever criminal trial of a former president in America. That's a prospect we've told you many thought was originally unthinkable. It is now a reality for our rule of law. And this is a proceeding that might even seem ordinary at times. The defendant had his hands clasped, we know from reporters in the room, and you can see that there. Reporters also noting that Trump at times sighed about the wait, although it's common for lawyers and defendants to have to wait and follow the court and judge's timeline, not their own. Some reporters stated that Trump was seen to either smile or smirk with his attorney at one point today. Donald Trump said very little. The judge asked him at one point, Mr. Trump, do you have a copy of the protective order? Trump replied, yes, I do. He could be seen picking up those papers in front of him and acknowledged that he had, he said, reviewed the protective order that bars him from disclosing certain evidence. So those are the rules, but you're dealing with a defendant who's awaiting trial and who has been accused of breaking both laws and rules. So the judge warned defendant Trump to comply and follow the rules, also warning about a prospect of criminal contempt. This order bars Trump from posting on social media or speaking publicly about any undisclosed evidence in this court proceeding for his coming trial. And by the way, limiting this particular defendant may sound logical. It is also an outcome that I can report for you tonight is a loss for Trump's lawyers. They had opposed this rule as unfair. They called it a, quote, overly broad muzzle, citing free speech and the defendant's campaign for president. So that's part of what is happening now. And if you're looking up at your news screen and going, oh, wow, did I know it was really in court? And there's been so many different legal things and the civil trial and then the debate he had and other stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, but none is more serious legally for Donald Trump. None involves the prospect of criminal conviction, of possible incarceration. Nothing is as serious as what's going on in that courtroom today. And if, and this may be above my pay grade, but if it starts to get normalized as, oh, wake me when there's news in that, well, that's quite a long ways from where you might have been in 2017, where if you saw the headline, Donald Trump indicted, Donald Trump in court, Donald Trump forced to appear at a criminal trial, you would be thinking that's a big deal. But we live in these times where everything gets normalized. So here's the other headline tonight, new. The judge formally setting the date for a trial of defendant Donald J. Trump, March 25th, 2024. This is what District Attorney Alvin Bragg pushed for, and he's getting his team ready for that day. You can mark your calendar as well. It shows that even for a former president, this calendar will be set by the judge, no one else. Now, I should note, because we live in the real world, March 2024 is not just any random time. It lands during a period where Republican primaries would still be scheduled. The outcome of that race, according to delegates, may or may not be resolved by then for the 2024 Republican primary for president. And we know that even without an order, I should say, even with the order for evidence, Donald Trump, the defendant, does still have wide leeway to speak in public. That's how the system is supposed to work. He can legally speak about his views and opinions, his defense in the case, which he's already doing. But he's also pushing out fact-free or evidence-free claims that could complicate his legal predicament. Take a look.
The criminal is the district attorney because he illegally leaked massive amounts of grand jury information for which he should be prosecuted. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris.
Some fact checks. There has been no evidence, let alone a legal finding, of any illegal leak of grand jury material. And the defendant, Donald Trump, has access to the courts. His lawyers can actually make that claim in a real setting if they want. They haven't. It is false, misleading, and many people may argue could complicate Trump's position. The other claims will be debated. If Donald Trump wants to present to jurors evidence that either the people directly involved or their families or their environments are somehow biased, that this is somehow a selective prosecution, again, with evidence that can be debated. I can't fact check that as false for all of the involved people. But I can tell you there is a way to resolve this, and his lawyers have not gone down the road of matching his claims with evidence. Now, that's the New York case. Big deal. And as I've said before to you sometimes, Diane, that would be enough. That's a lot. And yet that's not Trump's only legal headache right now crossing the wires. The Wall Street Journal, which is, of course, a Murdoch-aligned publication there in that empire, they have a new report that Special Counsel Smith has a documents probe progress report that basically they have evidence that it is entering final stages with recent grand jury interviews, and the Journal reports nearly every employee at Mar-a-Lago has now met with investigators, from the top aides to the maintenance team. Then there's this major New York Times report that in that same case where Smith is looking at several issues, he has subpoenaed Trump's business dealings abroad, suggesting he's exploring whether there is a connection between Trump's deal-making abroad and the classified documents he took with him when he left office. Wow. That is a big one from the New York Times. It means that they have evidence that the prosecutors are asking whether basically there was some sort of crime pursuant to what Trump is doing abroad. Pay for play, illegally selling material, that's a big question. In fairness, to be clear, you subpoena stuff to check on it. It's not a report that they've proven that case or that that would be a chargeable offense that they have evidence for. But it is heat in, again, another separate federal case as Trump is in court today in New York. It is serious when you have this many problems. And so when you look at where we are altogether, this is still the person that is considered the front runner and main option for Republicans as they decide how to run for president in this environment with all these legal headaches. But as Nicole Wallace and others have recently reported, we are getting ready for an announcement about a potential rival to Donald Trump. And so while the law is completely separate, we all live in the real world. And there is a question here facing first the Republican Party and then the nation, whether this man, who is innocent until proven guilty in court, is the right person as he sits in court today to lead that party or lead this nation again.